Welcome to Cattle Connect, your insight into Alabama's beef cattle industry. I'm your host, Reid McGuire, and this is Cattle Connect, brought to you by the Alabama Cattlemen's Association. Hello and welcome to this week's edition of the Cattle Connect podcast. I'm joined in the studio today by Jesse Henson. He is the livestock judging coach at Auburn University, where he also teaches classes on livestock evaluation. Welcome, Jesse.
Thanks for having me, Reid.
So, Jesse, before we get started here, just tell everybody a little bit about your background and how you got to become the judging coach at Auburn.
Yes, I grew up in western North Carolina, in Canton, North Carolina, near the Tennessee border there on a cow-calf operation focused on Angus, Gelvies, and Balancers. So grew up showing cattle, got into livestock judging in high school. That took me to college in Oklahoma. I went to Connor State College, a junior college there. Was on the livestock judging team, then transferred to Oklahoma State, finished a bachelor's degree there in animal science, was on the 2018 national champion team there at Oklahoma State. That led into my coaching career. Spent 3 years in Oklahoma, back at Connor State, and then I've been at Auburn now a couple years.
Yeah, so a lot of our listeners probably, if you follow, some of the coverage of like Junior Cattlemen's events on social media, you've probably seen some pictures from some judging contests and different things we've done related to that. But for those who may not be familiar, what exactly is livestock judging and how does a contest kind of work?
Well, I always consider livestock judging as kind of the competitive event for what we as livestock producers do every day. As producers, we're evaluating our livestock, determine which ones have more values than others. Well, the livestock judging competition would be kind of a way to showcase that in a competitive event. Starting at, the youngest age in terms of 4-H and FFA, you could get started as young as probably 7-8 years old. But anyway, for the evaluation part of the contest, it's usually evaluating 4 animals within a class within the species. Most contests consist of cattle, sheep, goats, and hogs. So within those classes, you're ranking them 1 to 4, best to worst, in terms of different traits that we evaluate within the species, and then you're determining how close you can get to official committee of what we call professionals within our specific organization there. But anyways, competitive event, and then those kids are required to go give an oral set of reasons on why they placed those classes the way they did, the reasons behind that, and they're scored on that as well. So that's kind of what a livestock judging contest consists of. It's basically, how close can you get to professionals within the livestock production world, and it's fun because it's a kind of a competitive side of what we're doing every day.
Right. So you mentioned that, kind of teaching evaluation and what we as producers do every day. What would be some of the other benefits? I know there's a lot of kids that maybe don't even come from production backgrounds that have gone on to be pretty successful at it and talk about how it kind of serves them well in life. What would be some of the other skills that you gain from doing it?
Yeah, you brought up a good point. I get kids even at the college level that don't necessarily have a ton of experience in terms of livestock growing up, but it's still something they can, get a lot from, because it's not just evaluating livestock. I'd say some of the biggest things that come from this activity, one would be decision making. Whenever we're in these contests, like I said, it's classes of 4 animals. Usually you have 10 to 12 minutes to place it, and then you have to turn that in. So one, that's making a decision, having to do it in a timely manner from what your coaches have taught you before. But then the next big part of it would be the public speaking. Like I said, there's oral reasons that are involved in these contests, where you have to get up and basically give about a 1.5 minute mini speech on why you placed that class the way you did. So one, these kids really gain a lot of public speaking knowledge, but 2, it's defending that decision you make. So one, you have to make a decision in a timely manner, but then you have to go in front of officials and defend that decision that you made, and you don't know if maybe they saw that class, those set of animals the same way you did before you're given this speech. So the decision making, in a timely manner, the public speaking, and then defending that decision that you made. I think is huge. And, like you said, not necessarily just the skill on livestock specifically, but those skills are going to carry over, those public speaking, those decision making. I run into a lot of employers that really, put, if someone's resume has anything to do with livestock judging, they, are pretty confident those skills that are going to come with that employee. So, know a lot of employers that kind of weighs high on their priorities. If they see that on a resume, that's really going to resonate with them. So aside from the animals, those skills that they learn carry over, even if it's not a agriculture type of job. I've known employers in other aspects, but they know if they have those skills from livestock judging, they could carry that over even into other industries as well.
Right. Yeah. It's kind of like, back in the summer with the episode when we were talking about the roundup, really the focus of a lot of our programs and why the state beef checkoff supports a lot of this stuff related to judging, especially with youth, is all about that workforce preparedness. And I think, you're definitely hit the nail on the head. Livestock judging is really one of those things that kind of encapsulates in one competition what all we're trying to do and has a lot to offer for a lot of kids. So you participated in judging at the college level and then now obviously coach at the college level. Maybe if there were some kids that were older high schoolers that may be interested in that, kind of give us an overview of what the year looks like on a college team.
Yeah, for sure. So, stepping back a little bit, and Reid and I can both attest to this, livestock judging is actually what took us to college and in reality what helped pay for it. So first of all, any of those students out there, I want you to know that opportunity is out there. This is an activity that can take you to college, can help you get some scholarship money. But just so you know kind of what the year looks like. So at the senior college or the university level, we start in December, and then we finish the season at Louisville, which is about the middle of November. So in that eligibility type of year, for example, this past year, we would have started out in December making a trip to Oklahoma to Griswold Cattle Company. They put on their contest with their sale there, so that's where we started. Then we would go into the spring, go to the Cattlemen's Congress in Oklahoma City, the National Western Stock Show in Denver, Colorado. Came back, had a few more local contests in Georgia, the Dixie National there in Jackson, Mississippi. Then we went on to San Antonio, Texas, and then was able to host the SLE contest here in Montgomery. Then went to Houston Livestock Show and finished out at the All East in Starkville, Mississippi. We're going to get into this fall pretty heavily as well. Next week we'll be making a trip to Oklahoma for a couple swine contests. Then we'll be going back to Oklahoma for Tulsa State Fair, driving down to Dallas for the Texas State Fair. Then the two majors rounding out the year in October and November will be the American Royal there in Kansas City, and then obviously the North American, which is our national champion contest in Louisville in November. So just an oversight, this team's going to probably end up going to about 18 contests in their season, traveling in reality all the way across the country. We're even looking at a contest in California in November. So these kids are getting an opportunity to really travel coast to coast, see livestock all the way across the country and compete at the same time.
Right. And then, we talked about those skills that you gained from actually participating in an actual contest. One thing that was really big that I learned, it was a little this way in high school, it was a lot that way in college, but is time management. You're going to 18 contests a year. This time of year in the fall, y'all be practicing about every weekend. You got classes on top of that. That was something I know you can probably attest to as well, is learning to kind of juggle all that.
Oh, for sure. I think that's huge. And, kind of in a jokingly manner, I've, talked to faculty or people around the school that maybe aren't quite as aware of how much the livestock judging team travels and how much they're gone. And they're kind of shocked that these kids can still, take 15 to 18 hours a semester and still, carry a 3.0 or higher GPA, things like that. But like you said, that continues on in life because, compared to the rest of the kids they're with in these college classes, they're putting way more time in this judging and have way less time probably for classes and still able to make the grades and get by and graduate. So that's going to carry on as far as time management because it's just, you got to get it done and you're going to be real busy. And I think that's a big skill in terms of the workforce, yeah, the time management is huge. Learning that, being that busy in activity, and knowing that you still got to get your business done other places.
Right.
I think it's a huge thing.
Yeah.
Your membership matters. Join the ACA today and enjoy exclusive member benefits, including a subscription to the Alabama Cattlemen magazine. Learn more today at bamabeef.org/join.
So kind of stepping back a little bit, we talked about judging at the college level. Let's say there's a younger kid, maybe in that 9 to 12 range, or maybe a little bit older, that's wanting to get started at maybe the 4-H or FFA level. What would you kind of say to them as far as how to get involved and kind of the mindset to have and how to improve?
Yeah, well, I mean, first thing is 4-H would be your youngest opportunity to start getting involved with it. So obviously starting at the county level, get hooked up with your agent, figure out how they're going to run the team, when they're going to get started and everything, get joined up. The next thing is there's a lot of resources out there. Hopefully your county agent, your FFA teachers, can give you a lot of resources, but then there's even places outside of that to start looking. One thing I would encourage at that age is some of these summer camps, and I would expect by, summer of 2025 here, that Auburn will be running a livestock judging camp. But also, all these colleges across the country usually try to run a camp during the summer. This 3 to 4 days long where it's pretty much livestock judging, all day, every day. And I think, that's been very beneficial to some students I've talked to that have been able to go, outside of the state, go to the Midwest, go to a few of these other colleges that, have camps where you get to, really take home a lot of materials and a lot of things there within a few days. So that's one of my big recommendations. Another recommendation is, getting to several, contests, get these experience. I'm sure you talk about things like Roundup, there's judging contests there. I believe a part of the national fairs tied in with a couple of judging classes. So and we're going to talk about a little bit in a few minutes about some other opportunities. But the biggest thing is just there are opportunities out there, and just take advantage of all of them. Getting into it, talking to maybe some of these older kids that are maybe interested in this college route. The thing, probably your junior, beginning of your senior year of high school would be the time to start looking into these. And I think some of the biggest mistakes I hear kids make, they think the only way they can go to one of these junior college or something is if that coach calls and recruits them. I coached in junior college for a while, and it's really hard to know every kid in the country across states and everything. So my biggest advice to those kids that might be interested in doing in college is reach out to those coaches, reach out to those schools, any of them that you're interested in. Make a trip, go visit all of them, to find which school, which coaches, suits you best for that junior college experience. Then obviously rooting for you to come back to Auburn University for your senior college experience.
Right, yeah, and that's a good kind of lead in. Always with a lot of guests like to give them at least one chance to kind of tee them up and let them knock it out of the park. So here's your chance. If there was any kid wanting to come to Auburn, what's kind of your big pitch?
I would say the biggest thing is that obviously the program's kind of been, I guess I would say, revived here within the past 4 to 5 years. So it's an exciting time. There's not a whole lot of colleges within the Southeast that, let's say, are really nationally competitive. Currently, Auburn University, like I said, we're about halfway through the season. Currently, we're ranked 7th in the country. I think our average finish this spring within the 10 contests we went to was around 3.5. Had the high individual at a few contests. So what I think is Auburn's turned into a school that can be not only competitive within our region, but a nationally competitive school. The Southeast and Alabama, specifically, is very rich with, livestock people and livestock people that do it at a very high, level. And if anybody was in the judging world, and you and I can attest to this, there hasn't really been a school outside the Midwest that we felt we could go to and get the right coaching and be competitive. And that's something I really want to offer, here at Auburn. Like we just talked about the junior college route, that's a huge deal that I would encourage any students to do, because that's a couple extra years of eligibility where you can come back to Auburn then after that and have that experience. I know some students like to go straight to the university. Well, at Auburn, with some of the classes I teach, you do have the opportunity, to come straight to Auburn as a freshman, but still get within those first couple of years some evaluation classes and some knowledge and some good practice in them before you would actually join the team for sure. But it is an exciting time. It feels new and it feels like there's some momentum going to it. So, I would really encourage anybody that's on this, that's listening, that's still making college plans. Make sure Auburn's one of the schools that you look into for sure.
Yeah, you mentioned that word excitement, and I think that really hits the nail on the head. As somebody that growing up in Auburn and being around it and in this world, I can definitely tell you that a lot of energy and momentum behind it, and it seems like livestock judging has become even more popular with a lot of these younger kids and some of the programs that we do that you help put on. And so definitely a really exciting time kind of in that world. So I kind of want to switch gears a little bit here briefly before we wrap up. And, with this being a cattle-specific topic, a big thing that we run into with a lot of cattle producers is folks that maybe are, really great breeders, really great at running their operations. But sometimes what you run into is they can look at one and tell you, I like that heifer, I like that bull, that's a good group of feeder calves. They can't always tell you why. So what would be some things, and we can just kind of go through each one, what would be some basic things, phenotypically that you would want to look for in cattle? Maybe let's start with breeding females.
Yeah, starting with breeding females, and in these judging contests, we're usually looking at open heifers, bred heifers. We don't see really cows past that point. But what I try to teach the kids is when we're evaluating them, we need to be predicting how those heifers are going to be, as mature cows. So some things like longevity, we want them structurally to appear that they'll last, in production, for many years, because we can't have cows that go out and make it 2 or 3 years and then you got to cull them. So that's what we look at in terms of their structure. So, the right kind of angles built into their structure, comfortable, moving type of cattle, we can expect those to last a little longer in production. You got to pay to feed cattle, so efficiency is a big thing. So a big thing to look at is, rib shape, body type, and fleshing ability, because we want, cows that are going to go out and be efficient and be low input for the producers. So that being said, within those two things, body and structure is the number one priority trait within our breeding animals. And that's how I teach the kids, it's awesome if they got some extra balance and look, and we want them to look like females, but the biggest thing is that they have the right kind of rib and body shape and that their structure is correct. And if that's where we kind of put our priority within our breeding females, that keeps us very consistent within our placings.
Yeah, and so, and we've done a whole episode on this, and I know, Michelle Elmore touched on it a lot, but kind of just to reiterate, what about in bulls? If we're going out and looking at some, at a bull sale or anything like that, what are some things we'd be looking for?
Mm-hmm. Yes, and it, obviously we do look for a few things different, but in reality, those are still breeding animals that we kind of expect, a lot like we do our females. We expect them to last a long time in production. We expect them to be, efficient, low input type of cattle. So again, body and structure is our number one priority trait, that these bulls have the right kind of rib and body shape, that their structure is correct and durable and looks like it'll last long. But then right in behind there is they need to add some power. I'm one that never teaches that our females have to have a ton of power, because we expect that to come from the male side, which means our bulls better have some power. So I think, having power and muscle right there behind structure and body is very important. I like a bull to look like a bull, like a female to look like a female. So I like a bull to have a masculine, manly type of look to him, but still have the right body and structure like we talked about, within our breeding heifers. Aside from the EPDs, which is obviously probably a whole different podcast, but just in terms of physically studying these bulls, the same as our females, structure needs to be correct. Everything starts at the ground. Feet and legs need to be a big priority. But then I want our bulls to be masculine. I want them to look like a bull and have some power to them.
Save the date. The 82nd Annual ACA Convention and Trade Show will be here before you know it. Join us in the heart of Birmingham, February 21st through the 22nd of 2025. Be on the lookout for more information coming soon.
Yeah, then kind of to wrap up, what about, with our terminal cattle, so maybe our, feeder calves, maybe fat steers, or if you're a kid that's got a show steer project, what would be kind of on the market side, what we'd be looking at?
Yeah, then we totally switch gears because we're in our market animals and their value in the end's at the end of a hook. It's not necessarily how pretty or how well balanced they are. Our market cattle are, in the end, their value is on of course, weight matters, but more so muscle and the correctness of finish. So carcass value is my number one priority trait, and I teach these kids as we're studying our market cattle, which means muscle. They need to have the appropriate amount of muscle and shape, but of course we have the quality grade, so the correctness of finish. I'd say number one priority is finding within these classes the cattle that best combine muscle and the correctness of finish to the highest degree, so that we can predict things like yield grade, we can predict quality grade, studying them live, and that's our number one priority trait. Still within our market cattle, we like to study body and structure because obviously, better structured, better bodied feeder cattle are going to be more efficient, are going to perform better, so that's still our priority. But when we're studying any market cattle, it's what their value is at the end that's the most important, and that's muscle and the correct amount of finish.
Right, yeah, that's all great stuff, and then we've covered quite a bit of ground here in just a short amount of time, and I know any one of these topics that we kind of talked about could have been just about its own episode, but Jesse, if there's a kid that's interested in judging, or maybe a producer that has some questions about evaluating cattle or anything like that, how can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, the easiest way, within the Auburn website, it's pretty easy to find my email, jlh0202@auburn.edu. To be honest, I don't mind giving my cell phone number out because that's where most people reach out to me. That's 828-734-3451. Like we said, we love to help out anytime. Obviously, as I mentioned earlier, our collegiate judging schedule is pretty hectic, but we have a lot of resources that we have to send out. So if anybody needs to reach out, you need some help coaching, your team, you would like some resources to help, better your team, whether it be, FFA, 4-H, county team, whatever it be. We do have those resources. And within the Auburn website, there are some resources as well, particularly for livestock judging. So yes, feel free to reach out. We love to help in any way we can.
Yeah, absolutely, and I can attest to that too. I know one big thing that you've done, Jesse, when you started, and I know had been talking about this since then, is offering those resources. Not just, you're a coach, you do that and do a great job of that, but one thing where I think really you and a lot of, some of your better coaches out there is that they provide those resources to, kids, ag teachers, 4-H agents, parents, and everything like that. So that's something where Auburn has really set itself apart, I think, and done a great job of. Before we wrap up, we'll give you 3 pieces of information that you need to know. So if anything we talked about today interests you, and we talked about some opportunities coming up for youth, the Junior Cattlemen's Association will be hosting 2 fall field days, one on September 11th in Troy and one on September 25th at the Coleman Ag Center there in Coleman. You can register for those at bamabeef.org/field day. But Jesse and his judging team will be involved in that. So Jesse, tell us a little bit about what kids can learn that day.
Yeah, we were talking about opportunities earlier. Here's 2 great ones right there where myself and then the current team members will be at these field days talking a lot about cattle evaluation, where we'll have opportunities to look at live classes of cattle. Then your students will have opportunities to give sets of oral reasons to myself and my students, get feedback, get critiques within those. And then a big portion also is going to be looking at EPDs and looking at scenarios, because these judging contests, especially on our bull classes, a lot of times we get a scenario, we get EPDs, and I think that's where some students could really gain some knowledge on how to break down these EPDs, how to break down the scenarios, what things matter, where the money's going to be made from these scenarios that you're given, So those opportunities, I think, are going to be very beneficial, on the cattle side of the livestock judging.
Yeah, definitely. And two more quick things. So on August 30th, those of you that are in need of some good replacement heifers, the annual herd builder sale that's kind of put on by Extension will be there in Uniontown. So definitely don't want to miss that next Friday, August the 30th. And then also, for those of you that show livestock, and we mentioned this a little bit earlier with some of the other activities that they have, registration for the Alabama National Fair closes on September 1st, so don't miss that deadline. But Jesse, thanks for joining us. Great episode, and I definitely think a lot of our listeners will get a lot out of it.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, Reid.
Well, folks, thanks for tuning in to this episode of Cattle Connect, brought to you by the Alabama Cattlemen's Association. Be sure to subscribe to get notified when our next episode goes live. And until next time, remember, beef, it's what's for dinner.